Good morning and good evening, depending where you are. It could be anywhere in the world that we are talking from. My name is Izzy Marmor, and I'm a co-vice president of Australian Society of Polish Jews and their Descendants. Our statement of purpose is, I'm going to read it out, to preserve and promote the historical and cultural heritage of Jewish life in Poland and to foster understanding between current and future generations of Polish and Jewish communities. One of the many things that we do as an organization is organize cultural events that relate to both Polish and Jewish relations. We have a Hind magazine, which is published twice a year, showcasing articles of interest. We have a Henryk Sławik Award, which is an award given to a person or an organization that helps foster a deeper understanding of Polish and Jewish relations in Australia mainly, but also in Poland. And we have an oration that invites national and international speakers who can address complex and relevant issues regarding Polish-Jewish concerns. Based in Melbourne and Sydney, we invite all people, Jewish and non-Jewish, whose roots lie in Poland, to join the organization. Now, a little bit about our guest, who's got a very long list of very interesting things that he's done, but I'll try to make it a bit less. So during his long and successful career, Chuck Fishman's focus has been on humanities, social and political issues. The photographs you are about to see clearly reflect this. His work has been extensively published, and appeared on the covers of numerous magazines. Chuck's images are exhibited and collected worldwide. It has earned him prestigious World Press Photo Foundation medals 4 times. Chuck's work is included in collections of the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery, the United Nations, Poland, the Museum of History of Polish Jews, the Center for Creative Photography, University of Arizona, to name a few, as well as in private and corporate collections. He lives in New York with his wife. Welcome to our latest webinar, Chuck.
Thank you.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself. Also, what first piqued your interest in photography becoming your career?
Well, first, thank you, Izzy. Thank you for Polarin, to Eva. Thank you for the organization, for hosting this. Sometimes I have a tendency to talk too much, so I wouldn't mind sharing my screen right now and maybe talk over pictures while we see pictures. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen and tell me if it works.
It does.
Is it?
It
Yes?
does work, yeah. Great.
Okay, starting at the beginning, I first went to Poland in 1975. So these pictures that you'll see are primarily in chronological order, beginning in 75. I went to Poland as a student of photography to do a senior project to photograph what I could find on Jewish life, culture that was left in Poland. And that work became a book 2 years later, called Polish Jews, the Final Chapter. This first picture I made in Lublin, in the Beit Midrash, or prayer room, or shtibel, depending on what one wishes to call it. This is the shamus, or the sexton, who was a pensioner, whose wife and children, daughters, left Poland, emigrated to Israel. He stayed behind. He had a bad heart, and he was looking after this prayer room. Still in Lublin, this is the last Jew in Lublin's once Jewish market. His name is Robin Davidovitz. That's his non-Jewish wife. They're selling punchkis, which are Polish donuts, to those who don't know. Robin endured Mauthausen. This is now in the city of Łódź. Again, we're staying in 1975 right now. This is in the city of Łódź at the Jewish club. They had a Jewish club there. Two men playing chess, obviously. This club no longer exists. The building was changed, completely changed. And the mural that you see there was by an artist named Adam Mushka. And several years ago, when this picture appeared online, out of nowhere, I received an email from a museum director in Łódź, asking if I had any other pictures of this mural because it no longer exists. And even the family had no pictures of this mural. They didn't even know about it. So I went to my contact sheets and I found one frame of the entire mural and sent it to her, and she was very happy. In Krakow, this is men waiting for Friday night services to begin in the courtyard of the Ramu. This man was 83 years old. He was the last advocate or lawyer, not the last, the oldest in Krakow. And like most other Jews who survived, like most of the people on this webinar will know these things, but most Polish Jewish survivors of the Holocaust survived by being basically kidnapped and by going east, and were taken into Russia, into Siberia by Comrade Stalin. And that's how he survived. He was in the eastern part, and Russia basically kidnapped them and took them into Siberia to work camps. For those who don't know this story, there is a wonderful documentary by the Emmy Award-winning filmmaker Sławomir Grunberg called Saved by Deportation. It can be seen on streaming, whatever, but Saved by Deportation tells you history in a beautiful, beautiful way, and it's a chapter of history that's incredible. This is in that same courtyard, that same Friday evening. This man survived both Auschwitz and Buchenwald. When I first went to Poland in '75, the people I met were 99% older survivors. No younger people, hardly any younger people in '75 that I met. This is in the city of Przemyśl or Przemyśl. This man we found, I say we because I was there in '75 with a writer. We went to do this project together on speculation. We had no idea if anything would come of it. And we had gone to the former synagogue, which was then a library, a big, massive library. And we were able to discern from a librarian through interviews by various languages that she knew of one old living survivor who lived not far from there. She gave us his address. We went there, knocked on the door. This little old man opened the door. We started to speak. He jumped up and down. He doesn't get visitors. The room was only a little bit bigger than this bed. And we were speaking in combinations of Yiddish and whatever. And he started singing in Yiddish. And so basically what he's doing now is singing Who Will Say Kaddish for Me. This is the entrance to Warsaw's Kosher Kitchen in the Kahila building. This is an indigent man. There was daily free lunches in the Kosher Kitchen, both in Warsaw and in Krakow. This is Shabbat services Saturday morning in the Warsaw Beit Midrash, which was adjacent to the Nozik synagogue. The Nozik is in use now. For daily use, it was not used then because it was way too big and cold. They couldn't have, there was no expenses to heat it. And the few people who came to this Beit Midrash, right next to it. And afterwards, they would go up. Well, first they're having services. And after services, there'd be a Kiddush right there in the Beit Midrash. And then post Kiddush, they would go upstairs for lunch. This is in Łódź. This was the caretaker of the Jewish cemetery. This picture actually was the cover of that first book. It came out in 1977, the final chapter. His name was Moses Lecker. He was a dwarf, and literally the size of a matzevot, of a headstone. And he was showing us the cemetery, and I was simply slowly following from behind. This is the caretaker of the Warsaw Cemetery, still 1975, Pinkas Shenitzer, and he was reciting Tehillim, or reciting prayers for a recently deceased person whose coffin was right next to him. Moving now to 1979, Passover 1979 in Warsaw. This is, on the man on the left is Moshe Shapiro. He was a central figure in remaining Jewish life at the time. And he is going through the Haggadah with 3 kids. That's starting to see children. The little girl right in the middle and her brother, who's extremely on the right, live now in Brooklyn, New York. And this was on the second night of Passover. They had seders on both first and second nights then. This is also late 70s. This is backstage at the Yiddish Theater in Warsaw. The actress next to the woman smoking a cigarette is Ethel Schitz. She is still an actress and still in theater and theatrical work in Poland, and we keep in touch. The audience for Yiddish theater always used headphones because it was translated to Polish. Krakow. Once a week in the basement of the Kehila building, where the Jewish community had its headquarters, its offices and kosher kitchen, once a week there was the selling, not by money, but by tickets, of what was considered kosher meat, or as kosher as could be, as it was explained to me. And this was literally the face of communism. People who lived through that time, who've seen this picture, make note of that and say, this is how it felt. This is artist Jonas Stern in Krakow, in his studio and apartment in Krakow. He was, of course, a Holocaust survivor. He survived near-death experiences, the kind of things that movies are made from. And he felt that he was given a second chance at life, so he devoted the rest of his life to continuing to pursue his art, but also teaching art, teaching students. This is a Majdanek concentration camp, former concentration camp. It's a woman sewing. She's on the outskirts of it. Majdanek is on, for those who don't know, is literally on the outskirts of Lublin. And it was both a concentration and extermination camp. This is in Warsaw, in the Warsaw Kosher Kitchen. This is a typical lunch on a weekday. Typical weekday lunch. That's chicken noodle soup in the foreground, also known, and I'm not great at pronunciation, but others are, rojol, or rojol, otherwise known as good chicken soup. And people came, it was their daily hot meal. This is also a kosher kitchen, but this one is in Krakow. This woman, her name is Rosa. She was a librarian at the time, and I learned later, like decades later, that she wrote a book about her experiences during the Holocaust. And what she is doing, she's not eating her lunch there. She is taking it home so she can have a little then, but also for her dinner. This is in the Ramu, the courtyard of the Ramu synagogue in Krakow. These are men waiting for others to come for Friday night services. This is now in 1983. I was in Poland beginning in 75, returned in 78, and then for the next several years until 83, only because world events kept bringing me back there. When I first was there in 1975, I never thought I'd be back again. I had no clue. But initially, the inauguration of Pope John Paul II, first Polish Pope, that brought me back as a working photojournalist, and then Solidarity, Lech Walesa, various things kept bringing me back. And when I kept going back, I knew the Jewish community. I knew some aspects of the Jewish community. I would go and continue to photograph, really for history. No one saw these pictures until 10 years ago. Most of these, except for the pictures from 1975, no one until 11 years ago saw any of my work from 1978 to 1983. I wanted it archived, and just didn't want any possible ramifications of my earlier work to negatively impact the younger people that I had met who would be growing up there. This is the 36th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. In Ghetto here is Plaza. It's the Natan Rappaport sculpture to the right of the soldier. So this is the 36th anniversary. This is the 75th anniversary. Same location, same angle, same plaza. Difference being, on your left, you have the magnificent Polin Museum of the History of Polish Jews, which covers a nice portion of that plaza. Anyone who goes might be in Warsaw. Polin is an absolute must. It's a 1,000-year history it's the entire history of Jews in Poland, and what you really learn is how both Polish and Jewish history in Poland are totally ingrained. They're inseparable. And it's a great learning experience, and it's a wonderful place. And this is the 75th anniversary, official anniversary. So 83, I was there from 75 to 83. I took a 30-year break, came back in 2013, and this is one of the first things I saw. These are Jewish kids playing in a sukkah in Warsaw, playing with a lulav and escrow. And when I first went back in 2013, I was just simply flabbergasted. I was beyond comprehension the things that I saw and was able to photograph. And one thing to say, this is all kept in film, just like it was in the 70s and 80s. I wanted the continuity. I wanted to make my own silver gelatin prints from the original film negative. When this was a continuation of my earlier work, I didn't want it to be a break saying, okay, that's the early work because you can see it's black and white and it's grainy or this or that. And this is newer because it's colorful, it's digital, it's whatever. There's a continuity here that, you want to see a difference? Well, they didn't have Adidas, logos, in 1983. So, things are different. These are the Polish Jewish artists. Helena Chernek on the left and her mom, Ursula, on the right. This is at Ursula's farmhouse studio. In 2013, Ursula built that sukkah that they're sitting in. Helena is the co-founder of Me Polin, which is Judaica made in Poland. Anyone who wishes anything that's Judaica related, I strongly urge you go to their website, Mipolin, Mipolin, and you will see gorgeous stuff. The young man in the middle, at the time, this is 2013 when I first went back. He's 22 years old here. 4 years earlier, he learned he was Jewish. The two women on either side of him also learned they had Jewish roots. But with the guy in the middle, interesting quick story, when he was 18 years old, on the day of his birthday, his mom gave him a little box and said, "This is for you, it's from grandma." her mother. And he said, "What's inside?" She said, "I don't know. Grandma made me promise never to open it, but to give it to you to open when you turn 18. So here it is." He opens it up. Of course, what's inside? It's a Star of David on a gold chain. And on the back of the Star of David is written to Damien, with love, Grandma and Grandpa. He's looking at it, says to his mother, "What's this?" Like, what's it? And she goes, "I don't know." And together they figured out, well, Grandma and Grandpa kept the secret. They kept it their entire lives. So Damien, his mother was a Polish Roman Catholic, brought up Polish Roman Catholic. He was brought up Polish Roman Catholic. And halachically, if one wishes to look at the halachic, the religious way, his mother is Jewish, he's Jewish, and he wanted to learn what it was like. Well, in the 70s and 80s, before the wall came down, before communism ended in Poland, there was very, very, very limited resources to find out anything about Judaism, the Jewish life and aspects of it in Poland. But he was able to find out. He was in Krakow. There's a JCC there at the time. There was then a JCC there. He went and found people just like himself who were then learning. Guess what? My family had a secret, and they thought they were the only ones. And slowly people started to meet each other. This is Sam Villenberg. Sam was considered the last survivor of the Treblinka uprising at the Treblinka extermination camp. He's being assisted by his wife Ada, who is prepping him for his portrait to be made. And they lived in Israel. Sam died a few years ago. He became a sculptor, and they were there to raise money and to do a documentary film and raise money to have a museum built at Treblinka. The man on the left with the black yarmulke, well, they both have black yarmulkes. The man on the left had just come out of a mikveh. He had just officially become Jewish. He had gone through a conversion process. This is in Krakow. Again, 2013. This is, again, 30 years after I'd not been there and come back to an amazing recuperation or a Renaissance resurgence, revival. There's all kinds of words for it. But he's being hugged by his best friend, who also had become, again, Jewish. Whether they found Jewish roots or not, usually people find Jewish roots. Not everybody, but if they go back enough, they find that, well, grandma or grandpa or somebody from somewhere along the line kept the secret. And some of those people who learn about that then wish to discover what it means to be Jewish. Some don't care. Some become religious, some become observant, some just become very culturally Jewish. The new generation of Polish Jews, and they marry, and sometimes then their children are born as Polish Jews. 2013 Havdalah, Saturday night Havdalah in the Warsaw Sukkah. This is JCC Krakow, a yoga class in JCC Krakow. This is a Brit Milah in Krakow at the Isaac Synagogue. Beautiful, beautiful old synagogue. Well, they're all old, but beautiful synagogue. These three men, the man on the left with the black yarmulke is the chief rabbi of Poland, Michael Shudrick. Man in the middle with the white yarmulke is Pope Francis, and the man on the right with no yarmulke is the CEO of JCC Krakow, Jonathan Ornstein. Jonathan is in the process of giving Pope Francis a free membership card as a new free member of JCC Krakow. This occurred in 2016 when Pope Francis came to Poland. He was at Auschwitz-Birkenau and received some audiences separate from that. This is a lunchtime. This is at a Jewish summer camp. And now some people are going to say, what? But there is summer camp for Jewish kids that's provided. There's monies given. There's very little copay, if any, and Jewish kids go literally spend a couple of weeks in the country at sleepaway camp. For those who know history, the dark side of history, and know what the name of the town Jedwabne is. Jedwabne, to be concise, is a small Polish town that in 1941 the Jews of Jedwabne were burned alive in a barn, not by the Nazis but by their Polish non-Jewish neighbors. And this is a block. These are blocks made from where the perimeter of the barn. This is from an anniversary of the barn burning, where inside, where I'm standing, inside there's a ceremony going on. People have come in, and there's speeches, there's all kinds of things. But this is a neighbor. This is, let's say, a neighbor. This is a local person who felt she couldn't come in. The book by Jan Gross that came out the year 2000 called Neighbors really changed the scene in Poland. The Jewish and non-Jewish dialogue of the country. Jan Gross was vilified by some, praised by others, because he told it straight. And it has to be remembered that when the war ended, World War II, Poland was communist. Poland was under the thumb of the Soviet Union, and nothing that was Jewish related really came to the front. It was all suppressed. When Poland became a democratic country, after communism fell, only then were there cracks in the fissure, and that's when people started to understand things and realize things, and the internet was already picked up, and people had access to genealogy sites, and there more and more information could be had. But this was in Jedwabne. This is literally down the road from that barn. This was the Jewish cemetery there. After the ceremony at where the barn was, the group moved to where the cemetery is, and this is a local man with his son. Again, outside the cemetery with people inside. Jedwabne was not the only place of massive of pogrom or death. Not instigated by Nazis or Germans, but instigated by the local population. Now, it has to be understood, many in local population also helped keep Jews alive. There was called righteous Gentiles, and they were wonderful people. They did it at the risk of losing their own lives, their own family. And some people just want to keep their head down, and others were just out to get whatever they could and kill and take. This was at a different town, not far from Jedwabne, where there was a massacre. Jews were taken into the forest and killed. Where this man is playing a saxophone was where there was a monument, and people had come for that commemoration. But a local Polish businessman, on his own volition, non-Jewish, because Jews don't live around here, on his own volition, had found various matzevot, or broken headstones, and had collected them and had made his own little memorial farther back in the forest. And these people are walking back to that memorial. 2019 was the last time I had been in Poland, and then COVID hit, and the world shut down. And I didn't know when I'd be going back. But in 2022, after Russia invaded Ukraine, I had a message from my friend Jonathan Ornstein at JCC Krakow, and saying, "Why aren't you here? And I said, well, it has nothing to do with me. I'm not shooting news. I'm not photographing news. They're Ukrainian refugees, and I'm not doing news. And he goes, no, you don't understand. We're helping them. We as a JCC, this is survivors saving survivors. And that worked for me. So a little over 2 weeks and a COVID booster later, this is what I found in Krakow. The sign above the gates of the JCC in Ukrainian says, welcome, primarily women and children, infants, because men couldn't leave Ukraine. And this was a typical day where hundreds and hundreds of people would wait online to go into the free shop where they could take freely necessities, over-the-counter medication, food, clothing, you name it. And people waited. It was never crowded inside because they were checked for their passport to make sure that they came in after the invasion. And this is still going on. This family, it was raining that day. They were waiting under the awning, waiting until their place in line came up, and they would be going inside. Near JCC was a warehouse where this was just where people from around the world, Jews, non-Jews from around the world, as well as local Polish people, when they understood JCC Krakow was distributing goods to people, people just gave things. And this is over-the-counter medication that came in to be then distributed, brought into the free distribution center. But the packaging is not in Ukrainian. So as you can see, this is inside the shop. They can't really read what it is, so you don't want to get a laxative if you have a headache. So there was Ukrainian speakers there that JCC Krakow had hired. They hired new people and newer employees, and they helped people in the shop. Again, this is all 2022. This is Passover Seder, but this is strictly for Ukrainian refugees, Jewish Ukrainian refugees. Passover Seder must be said, JCC did not discern. There was no difference. They weren't asking if you're Jewish or you're not Jewish. They helped Ukrainian refugees, period, the end. This particular Seder was strictly for Ukrainian refugees, and the JCC held 5 different Seders for the community, for seniors, during Passover. These are kids in the JCC Krakow courtyard with their brand new yo-yos that their moms got from inside the free shop. There's toys, sanitary supplies, you name it, inside. And basically, they're safe. The kids are safe. People felt safe. It was explained to me how, by different people, how when they came over the border, they felt relief. They felt safe. But here in the courtyard at JCC, beyond safe. JCC Krakow also helped the Roma community, once known as Gypsies. The Roma, still a persecuted group, had their own separate place to live. Once they got to Krakow, they stayed together. They were in a hostel. This is in the basement of the hostel. This is 3 generations of Roma, mom and daughter. JCC Krakow provided money for them to cook their own meals because they didn't like the meals that the hostel provided, so they made their own food. This is refugee with her youngest. She is now in Canada with her husband and her kids. But this was a place to stay for a couple of nights, where it was an 80-bed shelter that was near the train station that people could stay in while other people would try and find them places to live, or if they were moving on to another city, which many people were, that they would help arrange transportation. But this is upstairs where many of the people never even saw this, because downstairs were people on computer terminals helping those coming in. But if they needed a place to sleep that night or for a few nights, they were upstairs. And it was a former theater. This little girl, Ukrainian refugee with her mom, her name is Vasilisa. Vasilisa and her mom had an incredible story. Her mom became a JCC Krakow employee. This was at Shabbat dinner 2 years ago, which takes place, they always have a Shabbat dinner at JCC Krakow, but this is the largest of the year. It takes place after the JCC Ride for the Living, which will be taking place at the end of this week, followed then by this largest Shabbat dinner. It's a safety net. It's beyond a safety net. I've seen people's faces when either they come into this Shabbat dinner who are, let's say, tourists, or I've watched people's faces where they walk into JCC Krakow, tourists, and their mouth drops open, like, where did this place come from? Because unless you're attuned to what's been going on in Jewish life and culture in Poland for the last couple of decades, you don't know. And sometimes you're just fed just a line of, well, it's all death, but it's not. It was, but it's not. Again, 2 years ago, this is bike riders leaving the gate of Birkenau, Auschwitz-Birkenau, on the 60-mile ride for the living, going from the gates of Birkenau to the gates of JCC Krakow. It's a fundraiser that not only provides for Ukrainian refugees, but also the revenue to keep JCC Krakow helping seniors, helping Holocaust survivors, helping kids or young people, just like the young man who discovered he was Jewish at age 18. There's all kinds of programs, you name it. It happens there. And people come in from all over the world for this bike ride. And it's a ride, not a race. This is last year. This is now 2023. I'm sorry. The last picture was last year as well. The last picture of the bike ride was a year ago. This is also a year ago. This is in Lublin. Last year, Lublin there's an organization called Grodzka Gate in Lublin. They're a combination theater company, museum. They're located by Grodzka Gate in the old city of Lublin. They hosted a Lubliners reunion, which there was still one survivor who was able to attend, who lived in Lublin during the Holocaust. This woman was born in Lublin. When she was 18 months old, she and her parents moved to Israel, but she came back for the reunion, and this is the doorway of the tenement building where she was an infant. And this is not only the last picture, but this happened last year. This is called Shalom on Shiroka. This is something that happens at the end of the Jewish Culture Festival, which has just begun in Krakow. Technically, this should be taking place next Saturday night, literally at this moment, a week from now. It's not happening this year due to security concerns, as was written on the festival's website. Security concerns because of what's happening in the Middle East. And it was felt that there's too much that could go wrong. There's too much ill will that could go wrong. And this is a festival of song and dance, music, people dancing in the streets, thousands and thousands of people. And so it was curtailed for this year, but hopefully next year.
Chuck, if I may ask you, during that festival, you had your exhibition?
I
of
had an
of your images?
yes, it was up during the festival in
Right,
2019. In 2019,
right,
the exhibit you're speaking of was called Regeneration. It first opened in Warsaw at the Jewish Historical Institute. It was there for several months, then moved to the Galicia Jewish Museum in Krakow, and was there for several months through the 2019 Culture Festival.
right. Obviously, it was seen by many different types of people. And what was the response to that exhibition by non-Jewish people or
All positive,
viewers?
just all positive. It was all positive. Um, at least I heard anything I heard
Right,
was positive. I also heard some great stories came out of it. You know, one woman found her father in an enlarged contact sheet of mine, of roll of film, which made as an
right,
enlarged contact sheet of the doorway of the entrance to the exhibit. And it was from the Ramu Synagogue from 1978, December 1978. And she's looking at this contact sheet, and suddenly she sees a picture of her father. Then she's looking and she sees another one of her father. She had a breakdown. I was told she literally became hysterical and collapsed on the floor. Couldn't see the exhibit.
wow,
I met with her. I met her 2 weeks later, because that was during the festival. I met her, and through a translator, found out that she, as a kid, as a young girl learning how to drive, she drove her father every Saturday morning to Kazimierz, which is the district where the Ramu of the old Jewish quarter is, Kazimierz in Krakow. She drove him to this place every Saturday morning to his men's club. That's what she referred to it. He had a men's club that he went to every Saturday morning. That's all she knew. And when she got a little bit older, he wanted to explain to her what this was about. But she said, through the translator, that at that point in time of her life, she was this, carefree young woman. She didn't want to know anything about it. But her father died a couple of years after that, and then she realized she has nobody to ask. So, so she started becoming interested in Judaism. Again, just like many other people, her kids couldn't care less, but she started to learn about Judaism.
Can I ask you, before we go on to our audience's questions, I'd like to one question that always kind of interested me. How did you go about getting, in 1975,
Yeah.
Poland was a pretty depressed, oppressed country.
Yeah.
How did you get a permit to actually go in and photograph?
I was a kid. I was a student. I didn't tell people. I didn't go as an official photographer. I was a kid with a backpack and a sleeping bag and a shoulder bag.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
Came in with a train through from Germany through East Germany into Wrocław, which was the first Polish city and the Polish first over the border.
Mm-hmm.
But going in, had to go through East Germany. Go on the borders with the barbed wire and the German shepherds, and it was like, whoa. And then we got into Poland, and the first place I saw was the White Stork Synagogue, which is this huge building. And when I first saw it, to get to the White Stork, you walk through this little archway, like a 20-yard, less than that, alleyway, which is arched. And walking through that archway, I started to see this huge edifice with broken windows and graffiti and padlocks on the door and this was the White Stork Synagogue, and I got chills because that's when I realized that this is real. And nobody in my world, which is the West, which as far as growing up as an American kid, we're the only world that existed. Anything that was behind the Iron Curtain was an alternate reality. So I felt now I have a responsibility to show the rest of the world what there is here. And that's how I spent that. And I spent 6.5 weeks there doing whatever I could, and was able to get my film out by taking the night train out of Katowice through Czechoslovakia, former Czechoslovakia, again with the border guards, film under my shoulder bag on the bottom, hidden with a layer of things, and then cameras and then other nonsense on top, not knowing, and going to Vienna, not knowing if I get my film out. So I kept shooting very limited. I didn't shoot very much. Had to make every frame count, and but I got my film out.
Okay. We have a question from one of the audience. Did you ever come across the old Yiddish school in Łódź? My father went there in the 1910s.
No, I know nothing about a Yiddish school in Łódź.
Okay. One of the other questions is that, it also intrigues me that I have family in Poland, and I was told that for many years they were hesitant to actually admit that they were Jews. I mean,
Right.
we left in '62, and they stayed behind.
Right.
I'm just wondering, when you got there and you started to photograph people, how did you make connections with your Jewish subjects, and how responsive were they to your requests?
Good question. Well, 75 was different than it was when I was back as a working professional 3.5 years later. So 75, I was there with a writer. We would go, Wrocław, the couple of travel books that were available, like knowing that there's a White Stork synagogue, even, where approximately it might be. Well, one thing leads to another and leads to another. So, at the White Stork, there was, they had a kosher kitchen nearby because their little kosher kitchen was right next to it. And we were able to meet people, couldn't communicate very well, but enough so that it was like one step after another, after another, after another. So let's say from one town, let's say going through Galicia, we take buses and local buses, going from one little former shtetl to another, and usually, and the bus would drop you in what was the Rinnik, the old market, which is in the middle of town. Well, Jews often lived near the Rinnik, near the old market, so we would go our separate ways, and we would start to look for any mezuzah holes, mezuzah traces in doorways, which, by the way, Nipolin, that Judaica company I mentioned, makes brass mezuzah castings from places like that for people. But we would ask in Polish, we memorized a couple of sentences in Polish, where is the Jewish cemetery, and where is the Jewish synagogue? And of course, the answers were always nie ma. Nie ma, nie ma, nie ma. Well, you knew you were going to get a nie ma, and you can't ask anybody young. because they didn't even know what a Jew was. So you had to ask someone who was older, and sometimes they turn you away. But you ask 20 people, you get nie ma. You ask the 20th person, just like that. You ask, Cementar Shadovsky, and and he might point this way, that way, boom, and you can go through wherever, and you can see a hole in a fence that you climb through, and suddenly you see a broken matzivo, a broken tombstone, and then you see some more, and then and maybe there's a person there. That's happened. Maybe there's a person there, a Jew, a survivor, saying Kaddish or whatever, because they're there. So you engage them in conversation. You might learn of someone else, and then you learn various things. But then 3 hours later, though, there's a bus going to the next former shtetl, and you do the exact same thing again. And this time, let's say you find where the synagogue was, which is now a library, or now something else, or a gas station, or whatever it was. And sometimes you crawl through a window, like I've done, or you do whatever needs necessary to see what's inside. And sometimes, in some cities where it's it's abandoned, it's overgrown, it's it hasn't been touched, the ceiling or the roof has fallen in, or or there's just big holes. And I photographed whatever I could possibly find there. So there were various ways, but like in Warsaw Jewish Historical Institute, well, you have people to talk to there, and they can offer you information. So it varied, but it was like that. But in '78, it changed because I knew in Warsaw, I knew where the Jews were. I knew where I can get a free lunch at the kosher kitchen. I knew where I can meet people. Same in Krakow, same with the Ramu. And I came back with little 5x7 pictures, with small pictures of the people that I had photographed before to give them as a gift. They remembered me. And then they go, the Yiddish kind, and with the Yiddish that I understood, which wasn't much, but it was an acceptance. And it didn't mean that I can always have ready to whip out cameras and take pictures, but it was a slow, easy acceptance. So I was able to go back and continue. But again, from '78 to '83, no one saw those pictures. I was shooting that strictly for myself, for history, really. Thinking that in a generation or so, when I'm an old guy, all of these people will be dead. There'll be no possible ramifications for my pictures to hurt anyone growing up now. I'll take the pictures out. I'll develop them. I mean, they were developed out in their own contact sheets. They were archived safely. I'll do something with them. Maybe I'll go back. Maybe I'll go back and photograph buildings because there'll be no more people. But then the wall came down, communism ended, and the whole thing changed.
We are still waiting for people to ask more questions, but there's another one that I've got. I'm sorry if I'm taking over the time. That's the Jewish response to your question. But I remember going back to Poland in 1979, first time since we left. And as a foreigner,
we might have passed each other.
We might have. It was a very different Poland, as you know. It's like a total change. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah. But I was viewed, although not obviously Jewish, I'm told, I was viewed with suspicion, wandering around the streets of Wrocław. Who is this man? What's he doing here? Why is he taking a photograph? Did you strike that sort of response?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Anytime you take a camera out, even now, anywhere, anytime, depending, people, might look at you suspiciously, especially if you're taking up more than one. But, depending on where you are, what you're doing, how you're doing it, who you might be with, if you're with anybody at all, it all depends, but sure, a lot of photography is looked on with suspicion. A lot of, people taking pictures or, I was, but again, you have to remember also, I was very young. I was young, so especially in '75. I was a student, and I was only a few years older, when I went back. So I was this young Jewish boy from America, a young Jewish boy from
naive
America.
As well.
Yeah, and it's like, so it's all right. Like, leave him alone. Leave him.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
Year 1968 had a very negative impact on Jewish issues in Poland.
That was the death knell. That was it. That's what foretold the end of a 1,000-year history of Jewish life and culture in Poland, until history took a turn in 1989, when Poland became a democratic country. '68 was the anti-Semitic purge. And most Jews, middle-aged or younger, were given the option of being stateless with no passport and leaving the country with 2 suitcases and declare that they were going to Israel. That was 1968 was the pivotal year in Polish Jewish history, post-Holocaust Jewish history.
Yeah, it was we left in '62. It's just a very short thing, because there's a similarity to '68 in many ways. We left pretty much illegally in 1962, but everything was taken away from us at the train station, basically. So we left with a couple of suitcases.
Yeah.
You know, that's the history of many Jewish people that left in those years. You know,
Right.
but you know, I'm just wondering if there's any other questions here. There is one message from Saul Shatner. Hi, Chuck. We'll miss you at the year's ride, this year's ride. But thanks so much for your photos. Your photos have provided a great history of the Polish Jews. Thank you. There are many thank yous for your presentation. Just wondering, are there any more questions?
Any questions? Maybe in a chat or
yeah, you can see
live?
them in a chat.
In the chat?
So one is, did you ever feel like you were in danger?
No. No. I had felt anxious sometimes, felt a little nervous sometimes, felt a little angry sometimes. But no, and the year's different. From 1975 was its own encapsulated experience. 78 to 83, I was a few years older. I was a working professional photographer. I understood how to move around a lot better. No, danger only possibly of falling off of something, but otherwise, no.
Thank you. The other question is, how did you gain people's trust? You seem so close in when shooting.
Smile. You know, just be present, be open, be honest, be real. You know, don't try and fake anything. You know, there's people knew I was mostly knew I was there. I was taking pictures, you know, and as a professional, you know when it's cool or not cool to make a picture. Sometimes you ask, most of the times you don't, because you don't want to hear no, but you'd rather hear the no after you've made the picture. So it's slow, but it's a warming up. And sometimes you go where people don't even expect you to be, don't know who you are. But if you go about it, you know, confidently and as if, well, I belong here, you know, there's nothing wrong with my being here. I simply belong here. I'm doing my work and blah, 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 and just go about your day.
Well, unfortunately, we are very quickly running out of time, which is a pity because there's so much more that we would like to know and see of your images, of course. I would like to thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. And I'm hoping that one day you'll be able to come to visit us and perhaps show us your work in an exhibition.
That would be
something
nice.
that you might want to consider. And you are, you know, it's an unbelievable amount of work that you've done. And thank you so much on behalf of all the audience.
No problem. For people who really want to see more of the pictures from the 70s and 80s, you can freely go to my website, chuckfishman.com. I have a section, a portfolio there called Polish Jews, Life Under Communism. There are many pictures there, and with captions, with full captions, and you can see what that little snippet of time was like for the Jews who were there then.
Chuck, thank you so much once again, and hope you have a great evening.
You too. You too.
Thank you very much. And thank you to our audience, and hoping to see you all in our next seminars.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.